Hello there, it's Suzy Walker here from Psychologies Magazine. I've got my little friend here, my new little dog called Bertie, who's going to help me interview the wonderful Ruby Wax. We have Ruby Wax with us today. If Ruby needs no introduction, but just in case she does, she's OBE, comedian, mental health campaigner, author of many best-selling books, but her new book, and Now for the Good News, is out now. Just let me get this oh, look at that. Oh my God. Are you pleased, Ruby?
Well, yeah, it took me many years to write it, so I'm pleased with the cover. I'm pleased with the insides. Yeah.
It's really good. But I know that you're doing a big talk on Sunday, aren't you, for the Mind, Body, Spirit Festival about overcoming feeling frazzled.
Right.
And I think, God, if any time we're all feeling so frazzled right now, you know, lockdowns happened. And then we're just coming out of it now, and the anxiety is high. Ruby, help us. How can we use mindfulness to help us just to transition with this? I mean, God knows what's going to happen, but how can we use mindfulness right now?
Well, look, mindfulness isn't for everybody, and
yeah,
we need a tool definitely to get the stress levels down. Otherwise, you know, mental health is going to be the next pandemic. But for me, I wanted to, before COVID, I wanted to get my eyes off the bad news because it's too much incoming, and we become, you know, kind of laboratory rats with more and more hits of, and eventually it'll break you down. That's why the number of mental health, you know, mental illness and physical illness, because it trickles down into your immune system. So for 2 years, I've been traveling around to find the great innovators, the kind of green shoots of hope in education, tech, business, community, health. And so I met the people that are coming up, you know, that are reinventing these things, you know. So in education, you know, how to bring up a kid with empathy and train them to, you know, be able to regulate their own cortisol instead of letting maybe the parents burn their little brains out because they're pushing them to get results, which, you know, hasn't made the world any better, you know. And they still take the test, but you know, they teach the kids, for example, in some schools, especially in the UK, that there's no stupid question, because those are going to be the kids who think out of the box. So there's no punishment for being quirky. And they have a buddy system. And then I went to look at business, but basically, and in tech, and basically the motif of all, or the theme of all of these areas is community. And that's something I got out of the lockdown, is if we don't work together, it's the isolation that makes us mad more than and the uncertainty. Now, mindfulness is really good to kind of deal with uncertainty, which if we practiced dealing with that before, we wouldn't have swirled in such a frazzled state, but we didn't. So mindfulness is good for getting the, you know, getting the cortisol down, and frazzled really means stress about stress. And so we layer it on. So stress is normal, anxiety is normal, but we're the first generation to go, oh my God, I shouldn't be so stressed. Nobody else is so stressed. Mindfulness is good for that. But as far as the human race, I can't speak for everybody, but I know when I link up with other people and we cut the crap, you know, and speak from the heart and not do cocktail chatter, that's when I feel rested. I feel connected, and I feel, you know, this kind of compassion, and that's salvation. And these new green shoots are making sure there's empathy even in big business. And it is happening. I'm not fantasizing it. And in education and in tech.
I mean, I love what you're doing, because, you know, it seems very bleak, and it's just, it feels like, oh my goodness, there's no hope. But your book gives us hope. Your book.
Well, I mean, I did that on purpose, because you want bad news, switch on anything. I get bad news. I'm sitting in my house. I don't even watch TV. It comes through the walls. So we have to intentionally look, you know, and of course I travel to find it, but you can take things from this book and use it, you know, to change your life, tiny, tiny incremental bits, you know, techniques they use in business, in schools. Switch on the right tech, and I'm telling you, you know, they're not all out there to kill you.
What's the most inspiring piece of the book when you were writing? What inspired you the most? What, is there a story or a person that's doing something that was like, wow, this is amazing?
Well, in Reach 2, there's a couple state-run schools in this country where I saw kids from really violent neighborhoods, and you could see there were 11 5 to 11, you could see what they potentially could grow into because they come from pretty violent homes. But the teachers really, first they express what's going on for them, so they don't hold it in and they aren't ashamed of their feelings. And then there's a little corner they can go to when they feel themselves going into fight and flight. And it's different colors on the wall. One is red, yellow, green. And the kids can identify and say, wait a minute, I'm in fiery zone. I'm in frightened zone. And then they have tools that they work on. You have to exercise your brain like you do your body that help them get into the yellow zone and then into the green zone. And then they go back and take the exam. And that's when you get the results, not when you scare them rigid. And okay, they have the buddy system. I ended up crying at the end of the day, and I don't cry. I had to hold my face like this, as a small little kid said. Sometimes they have tools, he watches the rain, which reminds him of living at home where everybody's screaming. But then he watches the ripple effect, when it splashes down, and he can breathe again. So all the kids are so compassionate. And at the end, they all sang to me. Oh my God. So I had to hold my face like this so I wouldn't cry. And then I went to work at Patagonia, which is a sportswear company in Ventura. And I'll tell you something, these guys are walking the talk. They've been around 40 years and they don't rip you off. And everything is recycled. I got a sweater made out of plastic bottles, but it's not some hippie company. This has been going for 40 years and they quadruple their profits every year, but they make sure everybody's paid fairly. Even if the stuff is made in China, whatever, those people are getting medical help. It's fair there. And you can feel the kind of joy that their community is where they work. There's little lanes between the offices where there's schools for the kids, so the parents can just look down and watch their kid, so they understand that they're improving the world for what's down there. So they've got it right, and we can learn from that.
Yeah.
Not the whole thing, but just steal some of those ideas.
So in all of those, so in schools and in business, what are the common threads? You talked about community. You were talking about, it's almost like a self-awareness, for the kids to get the self-awareness. I'm at red zone, and then getting the tools. In all of these things, what are you seeing kind of joins them together? Any common things?
Yeah, if you want to do mindfulness, that'll give you the tools. So will yoga, so will certain Tai Chi. Those are at home things. It's like going to the gym and getting strength. And then you can go, you can use that strength. You don't just get it for no reason. But whenever people connect, and I see them do that, I have my Frazzle cafes at 5:30 most nights. And we have people all ages. They come on, it's free. It's at 5:30. Just sign up at frazzlecafe.org. And they come on, and the moment people speak honestly and they work together and they care, everybody calms down, because now you don't feel so alone. And the common thread is, if you have community, what the Quakers used to, or we used to when we sat around the fire.
Yeah.
The minute we're in community and you're working for the next guy, everything falls into place, because humans were born to bond. And that's the common thread. If you connect, they can pull you up, because there's a person who's listening and trying to figure out who you are, instead of just rehearsing their next line and using you as a sound check.
How do you, with the connection, I absolutely 300% agree with you. So many people are afraid to connect because they're afraid of being vulnerable. They're scared of being judged. They're afraid of people going to attack them, because often we've had a childhood where we've been attacked at our most vulnerable, maybe by parents or by caregivers or by bullied at school. How are there steps that you've seen, on your travels, that you've seen people, how they build these communities in a way that makes people feel safe? I know you've got a great community.
I don't have a great community. That's why I started Frazzled. I don't know my neighbors. I don't know, I have friends, but they're so dispersed in how you get to them, and we're not all working on the same page. And there's, if we get scared, we compete with each other, but in a kind of dog eat dog way. So my drive was to find this kind of link up. How did they do it? Let me just say, after COVID, I have a little place in the country, like where I write, just one room, but in the neighboring towns, Buntingford, Bulldog, whatever. These are just normal little towns. They are starting to go into the town halls and plan a day where everybody picks up litter. There's a day where they go feed people. You know, they can't leave their houses. I'm telling you, walk down those streets and people are waving at you. The temperature is already changing. I've seen communities in South London, intentional communities, where there's a bed where there's community halls, you know, for the neighbors. And if you have a baby, the other people will take care of it. Elderly people can come and they teach yoga and Zumba, and there's drinks nights, but it's for the community. So, you know, learn from that. You can read about it in my book and start it. You know, nothing will change until you get up and do something.
And the courage, often the courage to, you know, you say get up and do something, but you know, again, that takes courage, doesn't it? You think, oh, well, who am I to be a leader? Who am I to do that?
Okay, but if you're that type, then if there is a community, somebody will help you. You know, you could say those little kids in schools, they're victims and it's really bad at home. They're assigned somebody to take care of them. So if you're really in trouble, like frazzled, some people, it's not mental illness, because that's a different story, but frazzled, some people feel helpless. But if another person gives them their attention and really tries to hear how they see the world, you don't have to do anything. If you work in community, there'll be somebody who wants to help. So, you know, you can't say, if you're frozen, there will be people to defrost you.
Sure. And what you've just said there is about giving people your full attention. And really hearing them and listening to them it seems to be so key to all of this, because our attention is so, you know, our phones are going off, you know, bing, 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 bing. In terms of if you were going to give advice to people around, you know, I know in your frazzled community, that's what I meant when I said community, you've created that.
Yeah.
You know, how do you create a safe place? You know,
it is, well, it is safe. You know, we've been doing, it's going 4 years, but they were in real cafes. And now I run the big meetings at night at 5:30. And there's hosts who run smaller meetings all day. It's all free. The law, you know, you are safe in there. You can be anonymous, and we can't talk about the news. There's rules. It's got a format, and people can really come out with it for, you know, not to take over. And then there's breakout rooms, so they meet their little communities. And even if you're first on, that's your first night. I'm telling you, when you feel it, and it affects you. Because humans, I love this expression, we work like neural Wi-Fi. So if I'm if I'm nice to kind to myself, it passes to you. If I'm full of rage, you'll get it too. Community has to start like that. And, you know, they're in Buntingford. These are kind of conservative towns. The very act of being kind changes the whole inner landscape of people's biology.
If anybody is listening to this broadcast now and they think, you're right, I want to start a community, I want to, you know, what would you say?
Join Frazzled.
Join Frazzled. Okay, number one.
Yeah, go to your town. Go if you're in a town, if you're near a town hall or a church or whatever, see if you can start it. Go knock on people's doors who might need food. You watch how you feel. Just open the door for somebody when they're, you know, in a queue. It starts tiny, tiny. You can't say burn your bottles and start, you know, fixing the ozone. It's tiny little steps. And they're in my book, Tiny Steps.
Yeah, show up your book. Let me see it again. The Good News.
And not the good news, To the Future with Love.
To the Future. I mean, what a brilliant book. That's exactly what we all need to read right now, isn't it? Oh my goodness, because it's so depressing. Ruby, thank you so much for your time today. Lots of love. Keep up the brilliant work, and I will see you really soon. Lots of love. Bye bye. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Bye.